Namaste, Dhanava Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, we are here reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 1, Creation, Chapter 12, Text 35. Ahuto Bhagavan Ragya Yajayitva Dvijar Nurpam Uvasakati Chinmasan Suhridam Priya Kamyaya. Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, being invited to the sacrifices by Maharaj Yudhisthira, saw to it that they were performed by qualified, twice-born Brahmanas. After that, for the pleasure of the relatives, the Lord remained a few months. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna was invited by Maharaj Yudhisthira to look into the supervision of the performances of yajna, and the Lord, to abide by the orders of his elderly cousin, caused the performance of yajnas by learned twice-born Brahmins. Simply taking birth in the family of a Brahmana does not make one qualified to perform yajnas. One must be twice born by proper training and initiation from the bona fide acharya. The once-born scions of Brahmin families are equal to the once-born Sudras, and such Brahmin bandhus or unqualified once-born scions must be rejected for any purpose of religious or Vedic function. Lord Sri Krishna was entrusted to look after this arrangement, and, perfect as he is, he caused the yajnas to be performed by the bona fide twice-born Brahmanas for successful execution. Text 36. Tato ragyapyanujata Krishnaya saha bandhubi yayodvara vatim brahman sarjuno yaru bhivrita. O Sanaka, thereafter, the Lord, having bade farewell to King Yudhisthira, Draupadi, and other relatives, started for the city of Dwarka, accompanied by Arjuna and other members of the Yadu dynasty. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 12th chapter of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled The Birth of Emperor Parīkṣit. Chapter 13. Dhritarashtra quits home. Text 1. Sutta uvacha vidurastirtha yatrayam maitrayadatmano gatim gyatvagadastina puram tayavapta vivichita. Sri Sutta Goswami said, while traveling on a pilgrimage, Vidura received knowledge of the destination of self from the great sage Maitreya, and then returned to Hastinapur. He became as well versed in the subject as he desired. Purport. Vidura. Vidura is one of the prominent figures in the history of the Mahabharata. He was conceived by Vyasadeva in the womb of the maidservant of Ambika, mother of Maharaj Pandu. He is the incarnation of Yamaraj. Being cursed by Manduka Muni, he was to become a Sudra. The story is narrated as follows. Once upon a time, the state police caught some thieves who had concealed themselves in the hermitage of Manduka Muni. The police constables, as usual, arrested all the thieves and Manduka Muni along with them. The magistrate specifically punished the Muni to death by being pierced with a lance. When he was just to be pierced, the news reached the king, and he at once stopped the act on consideration of his being a great Muni. The king personally begged the Muni's pardon for the mistake of his men, and the saint at once went to Yamaraj, who prescribes the destiny of living beings. Yamaraj, being questioned by the Muni, replied that the Muni in his childhood pierced an ant with a sharpened straw, and for that reason he was put into difficulty. The Muni thought it unwise on the part of Yamaraj that he was punished for his childish innocence, and thus the Muni cursed Yamaraj to become a Sudra, and this Sudra incarnation of Yamaraj was known as Vidura, the Sudra brother of Dhritarashtra and Maharaj Pandu. But this Sudra son of the Kuru dynasty was equally treated by Bhismadev along with his other nephews, and in due course Vidura was married with a girl who was also born in the womb of a Sudrani by a Brahmana. Although Vidura did not inherit the property of his father, the brother of Bhismadev, still he was given sufficient state property by Dhritarashtra, the elder brother of Vidura. Vidura was very much attached to his elder brother, and all along he tried to guide him on the right path. During the fratricial war of Kurukshetra, Vidura repeatedly implored his elder brother to do justice to the sons of Pandu, but Duryodhana did not like much interference by his uncle, and thus he practically insulted Vidura. This resulted in Vidura's leaving home for pilgrimage and taking instructions from Maitreya. Text 2. Yabhata krita bhan prashnan kshata koshara bhagrata jataika bhaktir govinde tebhyas chopar aramaha. After asking various questions and becoming established in the transcendental loving service of Lord Krishna, Vidura retired from putting questions to Maitreya Muni. Purport. Vidura retired from putting questions before Maitreya Muni when he was convinced by Maitreya Rishi that the summum bonum of life is to be finally situated in the transcendental loving service of Lord Sri Krishna, who is Govinda, or one who satisfies his devotees in all respects. The conditioned soul, the living being in material existence, seeks happiness by employing his senses in the modes of materialism, but that cannot give him satisfaction. He then searches after the supreme truth by the empiric, philosophical, speculative method and intellectual feats. But if he does not find the ultimate goal, he again goes down to material activities and engages himself in various philanthropic and altruistic works, which all fail to give him satisfaction. So neither fruitive activities nor dry philosophical speculation can give one satisfaction, because by nature a living being is the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, and all the Vedic literatures give him direction towards that ultimate end. The Bhagavad Gita 15.15 confirms this statement. Like Vidura, an inquisitive conditioned soul must approach a bona fide spiritual master like Maitreya, and by intelligent inquiries must try to know everything about karma, fruitive activities, jnana, philosophical research for the supreme truth, and yoga, the linking process of spiritual realization. One who is not seriously inclined to put questions before a spiritual master need not accommodate a show-bottle spiritual master, nor should a person who may be a spiritual master for others pose to be so if he is unable to engage his disciple ultimately in the transcendental loving service of Lord Sri Krishna. Vidura was successful in approaching such a spiritual master like Maitreya, and he got the ultimate goal of life, bhakti unto Govinda. Thus, there was nothing to be known further about spiritual progress. Text 3 through 4. Tambhantum agatam dristva dharma putra sahanuja Dhritastro yutoshuscha sutasharadvata prada Gandhari Draupadi Brahman Subhadra Chotara Kripi Anyascha Jamaya Pandur Jataya Shashuta Striha. When they saw Vidura return to the palace, all the inhabitants, Maharaj Yudhisthira, his younger brothers, Dhritarashtra, Satyaki, Sanjaya, Kripacharya, Kunti, Gandhari, Draupadi, Subhadra, Uttara, Kripi, many other wives of the Kauravas, and other ladies with children, all hurried to him in great delight. It so appeared that they had regained their consciousness after a long period. Purport. Gandhari. Gandhari, the ideal chaste lady in the history of the world. She was the daughter of Maharaj Subala, the king of Gandhara, now Kandhara in Kabul, and in her maiden state she worshipped Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is generally worshipped by Hindu maidens to get a good husband. Gandhari satisfied Lord Shiva, and by his benediction to obtain 100 sons, she was betrothed to Dhritarashtra, despite his being blind forever. When Gandhari came to know that her would-be husband was a blind man, To follow her life companion, she decided to become voluntarily blind. So she wrapped her eyes with many silk linens, and she was married to Dhritarashtra under the guidance of her elder brother Shakuni. She was the most beautiful girl of her time, and she was equally qualified by her womanly qualities, which endeared every member of the core of her court. But despite all her good qualities, she had the natural fertilities of a woman, and she was envious of Kunti when the latter gave birth to a male child. Both the queens were pregnant, but Kunti first gave birth to a male child. Thus Gandhari became angry and gave a blow to her own abdomen. As a result, she gave birth to a lump of flesh only. But since she was a devotee of Vyasadeva, by the instruction of Vyasadeva, the lump was divided into 100 parts, and each part gradually developed to become a male child. Thus her ambition to become the mother of 100 sons was fulfilled, and she began to nourish all the children according to her exalted position. When the intrigue of the battle of Kurukshetra was going on, she was not in favor of fighting with the Pandavas. Rather, she blamed Dhritarashtra, her husband, for such a fratricidal war. She desired that the state be divided into 2 parts, for the sons of Pandu and her own. She was very affected when all her sons died in the battle of Kurukshetra, and she wanted to curse Bhimasen and Yudhisthira, but she was checked by Vyasadeva. Her mourning over the death of Duryodhana and Dushasana before Lord Krishna was very pitiful, and Lord Krishna pacified her by transcendental messages. She was equally aggrieved on the death of Karna, and she described to Lord Krishna the lamentation of Karna's wife. She was pacified by Srila Vyasadeva when he showed her dead sons, then promoted them to the heavenly kingdoms. She died along with her husband in the jungles of the Himalayas, near the mouth of the Ganges. She burned in a forest fire. Maharaj Yudhisthira performed the death ceremony of his uncle and aunt. Pritha, daughter of Maharaj Surasen and sister of Vasudeva, Lord Krishna's father. Later she was adopted by Maharaj Kunti Bhoja, and hence she is known as Kunti. She is the incarnation of the success potency of the personality of Godhead. The heavenly denizens from the upper planets used to visit the palace of King Kunti Bhoja, and Kunti was engaged for their reception. She also served the great mystic sage Durvasa, and being satisfied by her faithful service, Durvasa Muni gave her a mantra by which it was possible for her to call for any demigod she pleased. As a matter of inquisitiveness, she had once called for the sun god, who desired couplement with her, but she declined. But the sun god assured her immunity from virgin adulteration, and so she agreed to his proposal. As a result of this couplement, she became pregnant, and Karna was born by her. By the grace of the sun, she again turned into a virgin girl, but being afraid of her parents, she quitted the newly born child, Karna. After that, when she actually selected her own husband, she preferred Pandu to be her husband. Maharaj Pandu later wanted to retire from family life and adopt the renounced order of life. Kunti refused to allow her husband to adopt such a life, but at last Maharaj Pandu gave her permission to become a mother of sons by calling some other suitable personalities. Kunti did not accept this proposal at first, but when vivid examples were set by Pandu, she agreed. Thus, by dint of the mantra awarded by Durvasa Muni, she called for Dharmaraj, and thus Yudhisthira was born. She called for the demigod Vayu, the air, and thus Bhima was born. She called for Indra, the king of heaven, and thus Arjuna was born. The other 2 sons, namely Nakula and Sahadev, were begotten by Pandu himself in the womb of Madri. Later on, Maharaj Pandu died at an early age, for which Kunti was so aggrieved that she fainted. 2 co-wives, namely Kunti and Madri, decided that Kunti should live for the maintenance of the 5 minor children, the Pandavas, and Madri should accept the sati rituals by meeting voluntary death along with her husband. This agreement was endorsed by great sages like Satashringa and others present on the occasion. Later on, when the Pandavas were banished from the kingdom by the intrigues of Duryodhana, Kunti followed her sons, and she equally faced all sorts of difficulties during those days. During the during the forest life, one demon girl, Hidimba, wanted Bhima as her husband. Bhima refused, but when the girl approached Kunti and Yudhisthira, they ordered Bhima to accept her proposal and give her a son. As a result of this combination, Gatotkacha was born, and he fought very valiantly with his father against the Kauravas. In their forest life, they lived with a Brahmana family that was in trouble because of one Bakasura demon, and Kunti ordered Bhima to kill Bakasura to protect the Brahmana family against troubles created by the demon. She advised Yudhisthira to start for the Panchaladesha. Draupadi was gained in this Panchaladesha by Arjuna, but by the order of Kunti, all 5 of the Pandava brothers became equally the husbands of Panchali, or Draupadi. She was married with 5 Pandavas in the presence of Vyasadeva. Kunti Devi never forgot her first child, Karna, and after Karna's death in the battle of Kurukshetra, she lamented and admitted before her other sons that Karna was her eldest son prior to her marriage with Maharaj Pandu. Her prayers for the Lord after the battle of Kurukshetra, when Lord Krishna was going back home, are excellently explained. Later she went to the forest with Gandhari for severe penance. She used to take meals after each 30 days. She finally sat down in profound meditation and later burned to ashes in a forest fire. Draupadi, the most chaste daughter of Maharaj Drupada, and partly an incarnation of the goddess Sachi, the wife of Indra. Maharaj Drupada performed a great sacrifice under the superintendence of sage Yaja. By his first offering, Drishtadyumna was born, and by the second offering, Draupadi was born. She is therefore the sister of Drishtadyumna, and she is also named Panchali. The 5 Pandavas married her as a common wife, and each of them begot a son in her. Maharaj Yudhisthira begot a son named Pratibit, Bhimasen begot a son named Sutasoma, Arjuna begot Shrutakirti, Nakula begot Satanika, and Sahadev begot Shrutakarma. She is described as a most beautiful lady, equal to her mother-in-law Kunti. During her birth there was an arrow message that she could be called Krishna. That she should be called Krishna. The same message also declared that she was born to kill many a Kshatriya. By dint of her blessings from Shankara, she was awarded 5 husbands, equally qualified. When she preferred to select her own husband, princes and kings were invited from all the countries of the world. She was married with the Pandavas during their exile in the forest, but when they went back home to Maharaj Drupada, he gave them immense wealth as dowry. She was well received by all the daughter-in-laws of Dhritarashtra. When she was lost in a gambling game, she was forcibly dragged into the assembly hall, and an attempt was made by Dushasana to see her naked beauty, even though there were elderly persons like Bhisma and Drona present. She was a great devotee of Lord Krishna, and by her praying, the Lord himself became an unlimited garment to save her from the insult. A demon of the name Jatasura kidnapped her, but her second husband, Bhimasen, killed the demon and saved her. She saved the Pandavas from the curse of Maharishi Durvasa by grace of Lord Krishna. When the Pandavas lived incognito in the palace of Virata, Kichaka was attracted by her exquisite beauty, and by arrangement with Bhima, the devil was killed and she was saved. She was very much aggrieved when her 5 sons were killed by Asvatthama. At the last stage, she accompanied her husband Yudhisthira and others and fell on the way. The cause of her falling was explained by Yudhisthira, but when Yudhisthira entered the heavenly planet, he saw Draupadi gloriously present there as the goddess of fortune in the heavenly planet. Subhadra, daughter of Vasudeva and sister of Lord Sri Krishna. She was not only a very dear daughter of Vasudeva, but also a very dear sister to both Krishna and Baladev. The 2 brothers and sister are represented in the famous Jagannath temple of Puri, and the temple is still visited by thousands of pilgrims daily. This temple is in remembrance of the Lord's visit at Kurukshetra during an occasion of solar eclipse, and his subsequent meeting with the residents of Vrindavan. The meeting of Radha and Krishna during this occasion is a very pathetic story, and Lord Sri Chaitanya, in the ecstasy of Radharani, always pined for Lord Sri Krishna at Jagannath Puri. While Arjuna was at Dwarka, he wanted to have Subhadra as his queen, and he expressed his desire to Krishna. Sri Krishna knew that his elder brother, Lord Baladev, was arranging her marriage elsewhere, and since he did not dare to go against that arrangement of Baladev, he advised Arjuna to kidnap Subhadra. So, when all of them were on a pleasure trip to the Raivata hill, Arjuna managed to kidnap Subhadra according to the plan of Sri Krishna. Sri Baladev was very angry at Arjuna, and he wanted to kill him, but Lord Krishna implored his brother to excuse Arjuna. Then Subhadra was duly married with Arjuna, and Abhimanyu was born of Subhadra. At the premature death of Abhimanyu, Subhadra was very mortified, but on the birth of Parīkṣit she was happy and solaced. Thus ends our reading for today. We will continue from text 5, hopefully on Friday. All glories to Srila Bhakti Niskam Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Vigyan Muni Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Nirmala Charya Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Rakshak Shiradev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to our Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees Ki Jai. All glories to the worldwide devotees Ki Jai. Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Nishingapuli Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ekachakra Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ju Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Nitai Gora Hari 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 Bol.